In this week's podcast, Andrew Johnson sits in the hot seat, and Pastor Jonathan and I, we talk current events with Andrew. Together, the three of us discuss things like racism in America, and we reflect on President Trump's first couple weeks as president. Further, we explain things that we love about our NorthStone Baptist Church family, and we even attempt to answer the question, why do bad things happen to good people? This podcast is definitely a casual conversation, but I think you'll find it very interesting. So without any further explanation, here's today's Strength for Life podcast.
Welcome to the Strength for Life podcast with Pastor James C. Johnson, a ministry of NorthStone Baptist Church in Pensacola, Florida.
Gentlemen, welcome to the Strength for Life podcast.
Hey, Pastor Johnson, Andrew.
Yes, we are here with Jonathan Kaiser, the assistant pastor at NorthStone Baptist Church, and Andrew Johnson, often a co-host on the pod. So yes, welcome, gentlemen.
Sit in the big chair today.
Yes, you are sitting
important.
in the power chair.
They upgraded from there to here.
Yeah.
The guest chair.
Yeah.
Thanks for like conforming this to, like, it feels a lot better now that you've been working it.
Good. I'm glad.
Now, I want to start the podcast off by asking you, Pastor Jonathan, on the record, what are you drinking?
Got my hydration bomb right here. This is a little bit of lemon juice and half a lemon and salt and water. So it looks like other things, but it's actually not.
Yeah, it does look like other things. Isabel drinks similar things, and I will make fun of her for her things that look like unfiltered or filtered urine that did not get filtered very well. So that, I mean, I'm glad it tastes good.
Well, you remember in The Princess Bride how Wesley, whatever his name was, when he was in the Dread Pirate Roberts, you know, how he developed a tolerance for iocane powder by gradually drinking more and more of it. I'm progressively drinking worse and worse things until
preparing for.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll be able to drink out of any body of water.
I like that.
5 years.
You're one step ahead of us already.
Wow. So tell us why those ingredients. Now, you feel like this is cultivating health and vitality in your life?
It's a way to get water for sure. So everybody needs to be drinking water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In its purest form, we're not. But half a lemon, because lemon juice has a lot of like, I don't know if it's antioxidant properties, but it's good for helping balance the pH of your body. And there's salt, because a lot of people aren't getting enough minerals in their what they eat and drink. So this is salt with trace minerals in it. So that combination, you used to put honey in it, but I feel like I didn't need the sugar. You know, gave me a taste for sweet things. So now it's just the lemon and the salt. So if you can get rid of the sweet, then it's probably a little bit more healthy that way.
And it's in a ball jar.
Yes.
Which we're from, we were in Muncie 8 years, which is Ball State University.
Classic.
And the manufacturing center for ball jars is up there.
I'd heard of Ball State, but never thought that was where
David Letterman.
These gels came from.
David Letterman is the famous graduate of Ball State University. So it was our mission field for 8 years. So yes, so that's very healthy. Okay,
Yes.
it seems to be very healthy. In contrast, what are you drinking in?
Hey, I've got my Wendy's Dr. Pepper. I made sure to ask him if I could get a large, just because I wanted all of the terrible things, as much as I could get of them. So I'm happily drinking my Dr. Pepper today.
When you're young, you can get away with it a little bit more.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think that the Dr. Pepper, like he was saying with his drink, I think the Dr. Pepper has so many antioxidant, it helps balance my pH. No, it's actually just terrible. I'm getting cancer. I think that in like 15, 20 years, we're going to see some commercials of like, have you been drinking Dr. Pepper? You may be entitled to financial compensation, and I will receive all the compensation because of how many terrible things are probably in this. And hopefully RFK will get to the bottom of it and figure out what I'm actually drinking in there, because I have no clue, but it tastes good.
So you brought up RFK, which is the Maha movement. He is the kind of the spearhead of said movement. So that's Make America Healthy Again.
Health and Human Services Secretary. Is that right?
Potentially, yeah, he could be. He could be.
HS.
So let's talk a little bit about a little bit about President Trump and kind of evaluating the first couple weeks as our president. And maybe let's start with RFK. What do you guys think? Do you think he is going to be approved?
Well, I think that has the vote happened today, or is it going to happen today? I think it's happening soon.
I know he's already been interrogated, and
Yes.
but I don't know.
The date we're recording this is February 4th, and so you might already know by the time you're listening to this if he has got approved or not. But I think he's probably the toughest to get confirmed of all the nominees that Trump appointed, partly because of the role that he's up against. I think there's a lot of powerful people in that world, a lot of money that's in that world, the health world, a lot of people that don't want to get him in there. But I think with all the flaws of RFK, he's going to do a lot of good in the health department. Unfortunately, he is. I heard Doug Wilson say that RFK is okay with cutting the baby up into pieces before it's out of the womb, but after it's out the womb, he wants to make sure the baby doesn't have any sugarized cereal, Right. So in some ways, it's a struggle with RFK because he's got a terrible issue on life, but once life happens, he wants to make it healthy, So there's some flaws, obviously, with all these guys, and that's one of his, but I hope that RFK takes a wrecking ball to the health world as it is right now. There's a lot of shady stuff going on, and so I hope he exposes some of that, and I think he will. So I hope he gets appointed.
I believe they pushed him on abortion in his confirmation hearings, and he basically said that he would follow President Trump's leadership on that, which is good. That's what he should do. Just leave him. Yeah. He should just stick to his health and not try to do anything with abortion, because like you said, he has been liberal on it in the past.
Yeah.
Trump has done more to make abortion shameful than people thought he would.
So far, he's really good. And Vance as well.
Yes.
Yeah, Pastor Jonathan, I think, and you've heard me say this in the pulpit, I think we got to maintain a position as Christians to kind of call balls and strikes on these politicians. Not that long ago, we did a video, when the election was still happening, on the lesser of two evils. And so, yes, in that video, I suggested that President Trump was by far the lesser of two evils in comparison to Kamala Harris. But some people took away from that was some kind of full-throated endorsement where I'm saying everything Trump does is great, and I'm like full MAGA or whatever. And of course, no, all I was saying was one is less evil potentially than the other. But I personally have just been thrilled with so much. And here we do want to, you called, we were calling balls and strikes on RFK. There's good and there's bad.
Yeah.
And so I think it's appropriate. So fellas, talk to us a little bit about some of the good things he's doing, President Trump, and some of the bad things he's doing. What are some of your thoughts, Pastor Jonathan?
Good things are easy because there are a lot of good things that we didn't expect that he would do. Just to having the conversation to abolish the Department of Education, just to having the conversation, or actually he did. He reinstituted policies where we're not going to support any abortion research or efforts in any other country. They call it the Mexico City policy. He reinstated the Hyde Amendment, I believe, which is the Hyde Amendment was federal funding for abortion. He cut official White House ties with abortion providers, and so that is, you could say that's just a token, but it sends a message. It sends a message that abortion is not something that the federal government should promote, and that works all the way down. There are a few states who are trying to get abortion abolition bills passed. So Ohio and Texas and Oklahoma, I believe, are all three working on that.
Is Dusty Deavers in Oklahoma?
He is.
What a guy!
Yeah, Oklahoma, the only state where all counties voted for Trump, I believe. So good things happening in Oklahoma. So those things are good. His wording about the transgender issue, his executive order on the transgender issue was fantastic. Probably anything that we would critique him on is that things that he's not going far enough is probably what it's going to be.
Right.
But lots of wins.
Yeah.
People said so much winning, and so
So
there's
much
really.
winning, you get sick of it. That's what he predicted.
Are you sick of it yet? I'm not sick of it yet. Let's have some more winning. But it's mostly going to be things he's not going far enough on. But if you consider the fact he's a secular man, he's not a Christian, then if you take that into account, then what he's doing is so much more than we would have expected someone in his position to do as a non-Christian.
Yes, I agree. I've been pleasantly surprised with the amount of things that Trump has started and been able to do. I do think that Trump has accomplished more in his first 2 weeks than Biden did in 4 years. I really believe that. Actually accomplished things. Biden did a lot of initiatives and other things, but Trump has furthered the ball more than Biden did in 4 years. And so that's encouraging to see. What I liked was that Trump plainly stated, like you mentioned, he's not a Christian, he's not a believer. So for him to get up there and say there's only two genders was really encouraging. Like how simple that is, but yet profound in a world that's running to jump off a cliff mentally, like to insanity. Just to stand up and say there's only two genders was a breath of fresh air. And then also
Absolutely.
with the border, declaring a state of emergency, I think that was one of his executive orders. That was a blessing to try to protect Americans. I think his goal is to put America first, and I think he's advancing that goal. So I think he's doing a lot of things well.
One of the potential downsides we'll see is his tariff policy. So people who know more about economics than the rest of us are arguing about whether that's a good idea or not just as a threat, but as a policy. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll see if he really understands or not.
And there's no doubt in my mind that President Trump is a populist, and as opposed to a very principled man. And I think that he's really waffled when it comes to abortion and some of these issues. And it's probably because he's, again, not so principled, and he's kind of figuring out which way the wind is going. And a lot of it has to do with who's around him.
Yes.
And there are several cabinet members who I think are speaking into decisions and they're influencing President Trump. But there are several cabinet members that have Christian worldviews that have Bible knowledge and Bible allegiance. Okay. So they may not be an independent fundamental Baptist, but they have Bible knowledge and Bible allegiance. People like Marco Rubio, people like Huckabee,
Is Huckabee in his
Pete
cabinet?
Hegseth. What's that?
Huckabee in his cabinet?
Potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, he could be the, I think, ambassador to Israel or something.
Okay. Yeah, I think I saw that.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of these that, and I think Pam Bondi has an outspoken Christian testimony, and so when he's surrounding himself with these kinds of people, he's very inclined then to be where he should be on some of these other issues. For a little while, he was telling people to vote yes to Amendment 4 in Florida, remember, before he was elected president. And then he waffled on that. So, it's kind of like who's around him, who's talking to him, and then he goes with that, I think.
PJ, who is your favorite of Trump's cabinet appointees so far that he's got?
Probably Hegseth.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that we're going to be safer as a country because Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have done quite a bit of research on him. I don't have his book, but I've listened to him on a couple podcasts and stuff, and just where he is intellectually, as well as religiously. I mean, I really think he is remorseful, regretful over the mistakes he's made in his life, and I think he loves his wife Jenny, and I think he loves his Lord Jesus, and so I feel like as much as somebody in a position like that can have the Holy Spirit guiding him, I think he's trying to yield to that.
Yeah, I did listen to all 3.5, 4 hours of Pete Hegseth confirmation hearing, and it was boring at times, but I found it refreshing of Pete Hegseth's testimony. I do think he's a believer. I think he's born again, truly.
Yeah.
Just from the things he said and how many times he repeated it. Some people say those kind of things as a token trite way, but he said it over and over again, and as best as I understand it, he included much of the gospel. So I was encouraged by that. So PJ, what is one of your favorite executive orders that Trump has done in the first 2 weeks?
How many has he done?
Like over 200.
He packed out.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And just started signing away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I don't know of one that really sticks out as far as my favorite. I mean, probably the pushback against DEI, is right up there at the top of the list in my mind.
Yeah.
All that nonsense. Yeah. By the way, this is Black History Month, gentlemen. How are you, Pastor Jonathan? How are you celebrating Black History Month,
Jonathan?
I'm celebrating Black History Month by eating a lot of food that I think Black people would approve of.
Are you eating chitlins?
I'm not that dedicated.
Yeah.
I'm not
You
that
should be
dedicated.
drinking Kool-Aid, Jonathan.
That's true.
Instead of that.
Yeah.
That would be more appropriate for Black History Month.
Yes, I grew up in a mostly black neighborhood and, of course, ministered in Indianapolis at the Rescue Mission. And I remember the first time I had chitlins. And I told Andrew this not that long ago. You're involved in our bus ministry, and so Andrew's bringing in folks, and I was doing bus visits years and years ago and encouraging kids to come to church. Anyhow, a dad invited Mr. James to come in and have some chitlins, and I was thrilled about it. I was picking up the kids. I said, "Yeah, hook me up, man." So,
Can you explain for our listening audience what chitlins are?
I don't even know, but it's a social setting where you just partake because you don't want to be awkward.
Yeah. So this Sunday is the Super Bowl coming up, and in some way to support or to celebrate, I should say, Black History Month, the NFL is going to put end racism on the field somewhere. And
Good for them.
Yeah, I know.
Stunning and brave.
I'm so glad they're finally doing that because the only reason that racism exists is because nobody's ever suggested that it shouldn't exist. And so finally, by the NFL saying, "Hey, let's end racism here,"
Right.
we're gonna get it. We're gonna get it done.
It's absurd, of course.
It is.
Those kind of
crazy.
emphasis only make people more racist.
Right. Well, it's just divisive.
Yeah.
For no reason.
Yeah.
It's because it's like, okay, so if we're racist, then point out what's racist. What's institutionally racist? And then let's work to solve it. Let's work to figure it out. But we never get to the point where they say, okay, here's a clear instance of institutional systemic racism. Like if we could point out instances like that and say, here's what's really racist. Now let's fix it. But we seem to never get there. We seem to just have this vague idea of let's stop racism with a bunch of general terms, but no actual specific instances of cited racism.
One of the problems with celebrating a month where Black History Month is a very vague term, and so then you have to divide people up into like, well, is this person black by the cultural definition or not? And so there are people who you'd think would be a part of Black History Month but aren't because their opinions are unapproved, because it's not really about Black history, because American history, of course, includes it. I read a biography of George Washington Carver when I was a kid. Genius, humble man, responsible for a lot of good. But it's about a narrative, so they filter through the people that they actually want. And that's all history is. That's what history is, like picking and choosing based on the kind of story you want to tell. So they're...
Yeah, racism obviously is sin. Okay, we understand that. But there was a point in my lifetime in the United States of America where it felt like racism was almost dead. I mean, and again, I grew up in a mostly black neighborhood, and people didn't emphasize that. It's just so absurd. I feel like in my lifetime, President Obama and Eric Holder emphasize that in unhealthy ways, and that has carried on as far as among the cultural elite to just overemphasize ethnic background.
It's just divisive for for no reason. It's divisive. Like the NFL I mentioned is going to put end racism in somewhere on the field, and so many people are going to look at that and just go, "Geez, I'm glad they put that so we can actually finally end racism." But that's not at all what's going to happen. But they also, the NFL, lovely NFL. Thank you so much, NFL.
Shout out to the NFL. Not a sponsor, String for Life.
They're not actually.
They're not. I
Any
used to
day
love
now.
the NFL.
Yeah, so they're going to
went
sing.
woke.
Not only are they going to sing the national anthem, they're going to sing the Black national anthem, which is what even is it? I don't even know. But I heard it last year. They did it last year. The same song they're going to sing this year is what I read. And it's just like, why sing a song like that? Imagine if the roles were reversed, and if we were to sing, instead of the Black national anthem, we were going to sing the white national anthem. Everybody would, freak out, and rightfully so, because it's racist. And just because it's the opposite race, people think that it's okay. But like Vivek said a lot, and Matt Walsh had a documentary about it. But like, reverse racism is real, and that's actually racist. Like, you can't just.
Yeah, is there a Mexican History Month in the United States of America, or an Asian History Month, or whatever, to single out Black History Month? It just seems, like you said, very divisive.
Yes. Now, to be fair, there are more examples of like African Americans in United States history than there are of I would suppose Mexicans. Like they've been a part of U.S. history since the beginning. But if they've been Americans for that long, then they're considered Americans. And so if you trace your lineage back that far, then you should be an American and not try to try to create a separate culture. Like you should think of yourself as an American, and you should behave like an American, and you should adapt yourself to the things that you know are American. And you shouldn't try to think of yourself as something different. Hyphenated American, and that's a problem that groups like the Italians, they still remember their heritage and consider themselves Italian, but before you're that, you're an American. Same thing with any group that comes over. That's the difference. The one thing that they've been talking about is the difference between an immigrant and a settler. So an immigrant is someone who comes in and just takes advantage of the system that's already in place, whereas a settler is a person who comes in and wants to build a culture that they can pass on, and they have an eye for the future to look and say, I want this to continue on, the next generation. And Black History Month and some of these other initiatives are purposely designed to tear down history. Good history, bad history, it doesn't matter. It's all got to go, because they want to establish what all they're doing is tearing down.
Yes, the national anthem should be good enough for all Americans, and we don't need lift every voice and sing, I think is what the song is.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, we don't need that. That's just unnecessarily divisive, because the national anthem should encompass all Americans, and it should be, we should have no need to separate distinctions on, like, each race shouldn't have their own national anthem. It just seems silly and unnecessary.
And to your point, the idea of African American is such an absurd thing. Like,
absolutely,
the kids at the youth center that I ministered to back in the day, they're all adult men now, so they're in their like early 30s, and they're just Americans. They're black guys, but they've never been to Africa. Okay, so they don't call themselves African Americans. They wouldn't expect me to refer to them that way. It's just silly.
Yeah, I agree. So, hey, everybody listening, happy Black History Month. We just wanted to celebrate with you.
Right. And so we're talking about DEI stuff. As soon as these terribly sad plane crashes happened, the helicopter, Black Hawk helicopter hit the commercial jet. And then there was another in Pennsylvania, another plane crash just a day or so after. But President Trump, right away, one of the executive orders he signed had to do with, competence over DEI. And so the questions are, it's a bit of a controversy, speculation, but was there some DEI stuff at play, whether it's in the tower or it was with the pilot, which turns out it was a female pilot flying the Black Hawk helicopter. I don't know if you guys have heard that or not.
I did hear that. I think that explains at least half of why it crashed.
Right. A little indictment on female drivers. But she worked closely in the Biden administration, and who knows? The whole thing is sad on every level. But people are going after President Trump. All he, because he's doing this, calling out DEI. His point is just that competence matters more than skin color.
100%. And that's not an extremist viewpoint. That's just a common sense thing.
Red, yellow, black, or white. If you're good at flying planes, you get the job.
Well, the DEI stuff that Trump is referring to, I heard people talk about it this week, and there's a certain number of paraplegics that air traffic controllers have to have in their department.
Are you serious?
Yes, there's a bunch of different quotas they have to hit. It's crazy. It's like insanity. It's insanity. And they need a bunch of different ethnic backgrounds and different things just to hit.
Clown world.
And it's like, why can't we actually judge people and how well they do a job instead of what race they are or how many legs they have? Like it feels like it's absolute insanity that we're doing this. And for Trump to get up there and say, hey, we just need the best people in the best positions, it's not crazy. It's just like common sense.
The elites don't want you to know this, but paraplegics are not above average intelligence for the rest of the population. Having fewer legs doesn't make you more intelligent. As it turns out.
It doesn't make any sense to me. But what happened in the plane crashes was extremely sad.
Super sad. People entered eternity.
Yes. There was a bit of me watching the press conference with Trump the day after of those plane crashes. That was really sad that some of that had to turn political in a way, because I wish we could as a country go through a tragedy like that and just offer condolences and offer hope for these families that lost people. But through different bad policies and things, it became political, which is unfortunate, the climate that we're at in our country. But
gentlemen, talk to us about why bad things happen to good people. When you hear the story of that second plane crash, I think it was a young lady who had just had some kind of maybe kidney transplant surgery. And I mean, there was only a handful of people on that second plane crash, but it was like a medical team trying to help this. So, in the general sense, that's good people. They're going through some stuff and they're trying to see her. And then, recently, and I shared Sunday morning, Britton and I were at the service there for Valerie and Charity Hicks, and over at Smyrna Baptist Church. And Ed Hicks is grieving, and Ed and Valerie's son, adult man there, is grieving, and they handled themselves with amazing composure. Ed having lost his wife and his daughter, and anyhow, as far as good people go, it doesn't get any gooder than Ed Hicks from everything I can tell.
Yeah.
Pastor Jonathan, give us a little bit of biblical explanation about why things like that happen.
Well, the short answer is you can't know, and part of the reason why is because we don't have the capacity to look that far ahead, and it's a harder thing to live through than to say, obviously, but we make the assumption that life would have been better, and life would have been better for me, life would have been better for other people if this bad thing had not have happened, and those people had continued to live and do what they did before, and that's not an assumption that God allows us to make. God doesn't allow us to make the assumption that it would have been better if this thing had not have happened. It would have been better if this person had continued, because we don't know that, and if God allows it to happen, that means that He has a plan to bring about good through it, that good that would not have happened if that tragedy hadn't happened. And so there's something that, we just planted a garden, and you plant a whole bunch of seed, and little plants grow up, and at some point you have to go through and you have to thin them. You have to pull out some of them, because you can't have all the plants that you grow up reach maturity, because it'll none of them will grow very big. And so you have to, at some point, you have to go through and you have to thin them. And but it's for the good of, like, you as a gardener know that in order for to get the harvest I need, like this thing has to happen, And it seems like God does the same kind of thing. God purposely removes people from the earth, good people, not, and wicked people as well. But it's because He has there's an end goal, like a harvest that He has in mind that He wants to produce, that it's for the good of the Lord's ultimate goals that these things happen the way that they happen. Yeah. And so it's just a trust, a matter of trust.
100%. I want your thoughts on this too.
Yeah, because you've counseled people through these kinds of issues,
100%. And these situations, the ones that you brought up, just a reminder to me of death being a consequence of sin, and that's how the gospel's tied in. Like when we see instances like that, it just reminds me of our sin nature. Like without sin, those things wouldn't happen. Death wouldn't happen. It was all introduced with Adam and his failure. And so when I see instances of like severe death, like those plane crashes or the Hicks situation, it's sad because of the consequences of sin, the things that sin brings on. It reminds me of the gospel. It reminds me of why Jesus came in the first place.
So to give us life.
Yes, He could abolish sin, death, and the grave. Amen. And so that He can offer forgiveness. And so in eternity, it reminds me of like in eternity, we won't have those things. Like He'll wipe all the tears from our eyes, and there'll be no more death, no more sorrowing. And so all those instances in different ways remind me of the gospel.
Yeah, amen. Both of those are great answers. Yeah. And I do feel like, and I often refer to Genesis 3, the idea of, I like to say, we bump into the thorns and thistles of this life. Because of sin, we're cursed, and the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. That's Romans 8. And so, yeah, like you're saying, because of sin, we're surrounded by death. And I like your thoughts on just how God knows. You Pastor Jonathan, your explanation pulled back, and as God is the divine gardener, and so yeah, it'll be neat for, like, specifically Ed Hicks at some point. Maybe the Lord will allow him to look back on this tragedy and see Romans 8:28 unfolding, and how all things are working together for good. One reason why I think Smyrna Baptist Church was packed for that funeral, one reason why I think it was packed, and the visitation line was super long, is not just because the Hicks are such sweet people, but because he lost people so dear to him, his dear wife, his dear daughter. And that makes me think of what President Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance talked about as it pertains to the order of charity. You know, you start with, and Pastor Jonathan, what's the Latin for that?
It's Ordo Amoris.
Yes, Ordo Amoris.
Order of loves.
Yeah. And I love our King James Bible using the word charity, you know, because it's just the idea of what we can give, not necessarily what we can get. But explain, let's talk through that just a little bit, fellas. Talk about the order of loves.
Yeah, well, the reason this is a relevant topic right now is because of J.D. Vance's interview recently, and because of the immigration crisis that's in our country. J.D. Vance in an interview mentioned this idea, which is in some ways like a really simple idea, but J.D. Vance called it a Christian idea in his video, and we've got the clip and we're going to play it in just a second. But a lot of Christians, or people that aren't Christians, are refuting this idea that this is a Christian topic. So we'll play the video.
Let's see it.
It's old school, and I think it's a very Christian concept, by the way, that you love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country, and then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world. A lot of the far left has completely inverted that. They seem to hate the citizens of their own country and care more about people outside their own borders. That is no way to run a society. And I think the profound difference that Donald Trump brings to the leadership of this country is the simple concept, America first. It doesn't mean you hate anybody else. It means that you have leadership. And President Trump has been very clear about this, that puts the interests of American citizens first. In the same way that the British Prime Minister should care about Brits and the French should care about the French, we have an American president who cares primarily about Americans, and that's a very welcome change.
What is President Xi doing? What is Vladimir Putin
He's looking after the Chinese. Putin is looking after the Russians. They're entitled to do that. Thank God we now have an American president who's looking after the citizens of his own country.
Yeah, I feel like that's a terrific explanation, and I think he gets that from St. Thomas Aquinas, right? I mean, that's where the order of loves kind of comes from. But obviously, it's a biblical notion,
Right.
And the idea of, I think it's 1 Timothy chapter 5 verse number 8 about providing for your household, and if you don't, you're worse than an infidel. Like the order of love for me starts with Britain, and then my sons, and then as Vance talks about, it just kind of goes out further from there. So my family, then my church family, then my community, then my country. Yeah. And the idea of an American first policy, I think empathy has become almost an idol, where we're supposed to be empathetic for immigrants to the negation of love for the people that are immediately around us. We've got it all cattywampus.
Yeah, so Selena Gomez crying because Mexicans are being sent back.
Yeah.
I heard about it. I didn't see it. And someone offered to pay for her plane ticket if she wants to go join her people.
Yeah, she said those are my people, but she's living in America, and America has afforded her all the benefits that she's received. So for her to say "my people" is to slap every American in the face. Like, wait a second, you grew up in America, you've been afforded all the benefits of being an American and being famous and a celebrity and super rich. It's like she by saying "my people," it's like, wait, you're American, aren't you? You should be. You live in America, and if you're not, then you should go back to your people then. But with that same idea. There's even legal, you mentioned some biblical principles. There's legal logic that explains this idea. Like if there is a homeless guy across town, let's say he's at exit 7, there's a homeless guy that is starving and doesn't have food, but you have a kid who's starving and who's 4 years old and doesn't have food. If that homeless guy, dies of starvation, unfortunately, you would not go to jail for that. But if your kid who's 4 years old dies of starvation in your household, you would go to jail for that. So even legally, there's logical parameters that underscore this idea of ordo amoris, that you provide for your family first, and then you provide for those in your local, like your neighborhood that are immediately next to you, and then you provide for people outside of that. But I think this whole idea of loving the world is such an easy idea that it's not really real. Like I can sit on my couch, or I can sit in my dorm room at PCC, and I can eat Doritos on my bed and love the world, because loving the world requires no action at all. It's not an actionable philosophy. Yeah. I can sit on my bed and eat ice cream and love the world because it's this warm, compassionate, empathetic feeling in your heart that doesn't actually exhibit itself anywhere in society.
Right.
But loving your family is a tangible thing that you can actually action out. But loving the world is just such a weird phrase that doesn't actually mean anything.
Thoughts and love to Brazil.
Yeah, like what
all
does that
you can
even
do.
mean? That's not real.
Yeah.
Now there are people who say the fake Christian response to it is to say that Jesus said that the person who doesn't hate his father or mother or wife or children and come after him is not worthy of him, and Jesus came to set with a sword to set mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and son against father, and those kinds of things. So how would you guys respond to that, where they say that, well, Jesus came to put division?
Yeah, he gets
Yeah,
us,
he
right.
gets-
Exactly. Yeah, Jesus came to put division between those
Yes.
between those close relationships. What would you say to that?
Yeah, not that passage is not teaching that at all, because with that interpretation, you would have to take it literally. And Jesus is not teaching that we should hate our father and mother or hate our brethren. If you're taking that interpretation of it, but that's what that would mean. But that's not at all what Jesus is teaching. Jesus is actually taking the most immediate sphere that we have to love, like the thing that we're most called to love, like this is our family, our father and mother, and he's saying, I know you love that the most in this world, but your love for me, your love for God should be so much higher.
Yeah.
So it's literally the opposite of what they're trying to spin it as. Like that, Jesus is underlining, wait a second, yeah, that is your primary earthly physical love that you should have. It's for your family. But he's saying that the love for God should be above that. So it doesn't mean that you should hate your family and everybody's on an equal playing field. The homeless guy on exit 7 should be on the equal playing field as your mom. Like that's not how that works at all. But rather, the most important earthly sphere that you have, God should be way far above that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another passage that they use to try to manipulate or draw out empathy from people or guilt trip them is the Good Samaritan.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Luke
Yep.
19, I think it is. But yeah, it's totally a misapplication of what it means to minister to the Good Samaritan.
Yeah, the Good Samaritan is an answer, I think, to the question of who instead of what. Like who is my neighbor?
Yeah.
Instead of like
Can
how
I be a neighbor too?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Also, the Good Samaritan was in mortal danger. He was bleeding out on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And
I think the Good Samaritan had his house in order, and he had his kids clothed and fed, because
And he fell among thieves.
because we should, like, here's the balance of the things I'm saying. Like if my family is in order one day and my kids are fed and clothed, and I've got somebody a few doors down that needs food, or there's a homeless guy that I've interacted with a good bit, and I have provided for the sphere that's most immediate to me, then I should be compassionate to those people if God's entrusted me enough resources to be able to do that. Like compassion is a concept that's in the Bible, but compassion has to be filtered out through the spheres that are in front of us.
Very good. Yeah. I personally think that the border should be closed for a while. And I've preached that before at our church, and maybe that's a little bit of a hot take. But, right now I think President Trump is doing the right thing by restricting the border and trying to make sure that people that do come in legally. But I feel like I can make a biblical case for why it should just be closed, period, for a while. And the biblical case would be based out of the pastoral epistles, Paul writing to Timothy, telling the pastor, how can you care for the house of God if your own house is out of order. And so I feel like our house as a country is out of order. And President Trump is a whirlwind of activity trying to get stuff in order, I think, in the United States. But it's just ridiculous to just keep letting people pile in to a house that's kind of a mess. Before anybody else can come live in my house, I got to fix my house. Or before I can, like you're saying, go down the street and help my neighbor, you were saying you got to make sure your own house is. So I think until America we've got so much debt. And we just keep printing money, and we just keep getting into more debt. And there's just so many things we need to fix before we go and fix the world.
Yeah, and that's why NorthStone Baptist Church exists.
Yeah,
we are helping to return America to health, but spiritually, not economically or politically, because the best nation for someone to come to is a nation that thinks of itself as Christian, and where there are Christian towns and where churches are doing their job and are unashamedly preaching the gospel, and people are responding to it. They're being saved and changed, and that kind of country that's has that as its culture, and those kinds of people are the best ones for an immigrant to come into.
Totally agree.
It'd be dangerous for them to come into a secular country that hates God.
Yeah, because I do want to see President Trump or whomever make America great again. At minimum, he's already made America optimistic again. We're very excited about what's happening. But we do know, what is it that will exalt a nation? It is righteousness, according to Proverbs 14:34. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Gentlemen, talk to us about maybe interactions you have had with people when you've been witnessing. You're preaching righteousness, maybe downtown Pensacola or in the variety of ministries we're involved in. Talk to us a little bit about that. Do you have any testimonies you want to share of people you've interacted with in downtown Pensacola?
Well, we should first give a shout out to the people who are really faithful to go downtown on Thursdays. So Andrew does it a lot, and I guess the people who are kind of the cornerstones of that are the Wilsons and Scott Butler and Mike Bradley and Jim Wasser go down there quite a bit as well.
Bunch of dogs.
And so
so
much respect to those
Yeah.
for keeping that alive. So Andrew, you've been more than the rest of us, I think. So
Well, it's
what's
been
your
exciting.
interaction been?
Yeah, it's been exciting. So, it just depends on the week, I guess, for the amount of fruit that we see from it. But there's been a lot of exciting things. We've got to lead several people to the Lord. Even the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, we've got to see people get saved, even there on the street. We've seen some people come to the church because of it. But it's exciting. It's exciting to like go put feet to the gospel and to go out and get to talk to people the gospel, and even relationships we've been able to build. I think of 2 people specifically that we have been able to see consecutive weeks in a row and further conversations, whether those conversations are gospel conversations or whether they're just physical, temporal, conversations. It's been beneficial. And then we've been able to see people that work at PCC or in the community, and it's encouraging to just meet people like that and get to strengthen relationships and further those things.
I like how you said put feet to the gospel. It made me think of Romans 10. I think it's Romans 10 about how beautiful are the feet of them.
And I need it. My feet are disgusting. My feet are ugly. So I'm trying to
beautiful feet for people that preach the glad tidings, the good news of the gospel.
The gospel pedicure.
That's right.
It doesn't need
That should be
one.
your sermon for Romans.
That's a good sermon title. You're helping me, Pastor Jonathan. That's funny. Yeah. Well, and that's really the key. I mean, if we want to see America great, we have got to give them the gospel.
Yeah.
And because it is righteousness that exalts a nation.
That's the cure. It's not going to be anything legislated by the Senate or Congress. It's going to be gospel.
Both and those things have to be done.
Yes.
Righteousness has to be enforced. It has to be enforced. There are people who say it shouldn't, but in order to be faithful to, in order to be faithful to Scripture, governments have to enforce righteousness. But that won't change the heart. So when you preach your John sermon series, the Lord will work through that to change hearts.
Yes. I think physical change will come from Congress, but eternal change will come from the church.
Yep.
I think President Trump is making decisions that represent biblical justice very often. But then there are times, like I say, we got to call balls and strikes. There are times where it's just like, what? Like the appointment of a gay, what is he, the Secretary of the Treasury or something?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't hear that, but all you had to say was gay, and I could just be like, nah.
Yeah, it's just stuff like that. It's a little bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah.
This is one of those times where competence, where we don't want competence.
Right.
If you're gay and competent, I want someone who's straight incompetent. Like go back to your partner.
He probably is smart too. He's probably a smart gay person.
Yeah.
They do exist sometimes. But it's we have to
Of course they do.
we have to just prioritize those things.
Yeah,
Like,
we don't need a Pete Buttigieg,
Right.
In President Trump's.
Yeah, he's 0 for 2 in the competence and straight category.
Right.
And just to be clear, the reason is not like you said that gay people can't be smart or even nice or pleasant people to be around.
Right.
The issue is that leaders represent things to the people that they lead, and just like Donald Trump, President Trump, doing the things against abortion that he has sends a message. Having a homosexual in a position of high leadership sends a message to the rest of the country.
Yes.
And that's not a message that's good for Americans. It's not a message that promotes righteousness. So we do want them to be saved. We do want them, they are smart, they're smart, successful men and women, but it's not good for our country to have them in leadership.
Talking about leadership, I think J.D. Vance has done a great job so far this first couple of weeks. And I you've probably seen this video already, but I want to show you this other video. The famous line is, "I don't care, Margaret," from his clip.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to show you this video and get your comments.
Yeah, let's check it out.
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted And then we're literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals
but there are
have been properly
30,000
vetted.
people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary
Do you stand by
concern
it?
as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that
So
we
no.
know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These
It's
people are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted, and many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted, and because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
Yeah.
One of the great things about the Trump administration is so many childless cat ladies taking an L in the Senate and such.
Right. That's hilarious.
Yeah, like that's leadership right there.
Yes.
JD Vance is showing leadership.
Yes, hearing him say some of these things is such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Things that we know are true and more people know are true.
Yeah.
And no one has had the courage to say it out loud.
Yeah. And that line has been equated to the Gone with the Wind line. Which is,
yes.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn, which is a biblical word, by the way.
It is.
But my son, Andrew, has never seen the movie Gone with the Wind.
I haven't. No.
It's an American classic. Now, Pastor Jonathan, have you?
I've not. I hear you have to take a week of your life to watch it.
Right. It's a long movie. But I grew up in that age, I guess, when that was really popular. Off camera here is Chris Upmanis. Have you seen Gone with the Wind? Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Man, Pastor grew up and he's seen Gone with the Wind. He grew up when racial relations were better.
This is
Just what a life he's had.
Right, yeah. Just after the civil rights movement, things had simmered down. You know, the Rodney King beating, that happened in my lifetime. That was major. And then everybody realized how heinous that was, and everybody was nice to each other. We had about a decade of just people getting along really well until the elites decide to use race as leverage.
Yeah, there is often
division.
instances of racism, but systemic is the problem. Like people claim systemic racism, but that's not
that's
a
a
thing
good
in
point.
America. But like instances of racism are real because sin is real. And every instance, like racism you mentioned earlier, is sin. Racism is clearly and obviously sin. And so all sins are going to be evident whether they're played out in, lust or stealing or pride or, racism. It's just another form of sin. There are going to be instances of sin until Jesus comes back. But there's not systemic, at least as far as I can tell. So according to my study over the last 20 years, I haven't found anything.
Right. Yeah, let me tell you guys this. Here's a little bit of a church announcement, okay? Pastor Jonathan, of course, you do the announcements, so you'll be announcing this. But I'm very excited to have a representative from the Hope Children's Home coming to NorthStone Baptist Church Sunday night, March the 9th. And, our church has done a lot to team up with good organizations. And from everything I can tell, the Hope Children's Home is one of those kinds of organizations that we want to team up with. But they're going to come and basically take over the service. They bring 20 to 25 kids with them from their children's home. And they're going to do songs and just kind of present their ministry. Their executive director is going to speak. So anyhow, if you're a member of NorthStone Baptist Church and you're watching this, I don't want you to miss Sunday night, March the 9th, because I want you to hear the heart of the people that lead that ministry there. The Hope Children's Home. I mean, after all, we as a church have done a lot to push back against abortion. And so therefore, we've got to then be before adoption and before taking care of these kinds of children. Yeah. So I'm excited about that.
Amen.
They're local?
They're in southern Florida.
Yeah, they're in Florida. I got to talk to the lady on the phone, and she told me that in 2024 of the calendar year, they got to see 23 people get saved.
Amen.
And so it's exciting. I'm excited. I'm going
to see if I can get the executive director from their ministry on the pod in the future.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and really pick his brain about his burden.
Yes.
But if folks are interested, you can go on their website, the Hope Children's Home website, and take a virtual tour of their campus. And you can see the facilities that the children benefit from. And it sounds like a terrific ministry. And the executive director and his wife, I think, for sure went to PCC for a while, maybe graduates of PCC. So very like-minded, good Christian people. It sounds like a terrific ministry.
Amen.
Now, to be clear, in a Christian country, there would be no need for an adoption ministry. Mm-hmm. Just like we want to see abortion abolished, we want to see adoption agencies. They see those people, move on to another kind of ministry, because adoptions happen because of bad families and bad homes, mostly, of course. And so if American families become Christian, then there'll be no need for them to, they won't abandon their kids, and we won't need to for those kids who are broken to have to go to a different home.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's necessary because of sin.
You're right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was talking to the representative from the Hope Children's Home on the phone earlier today, and she was telling me, I brought up Ron DeSantis. I forget exactly why. I am a cheerleader for Ron DeSantis. I am so thrilled that I live in the free state of Florida, and a lot of that has to do with the way DeSantis has led our state. But she said there are so many unique benefits to leading a children's home in the state of Florida. Other states do not have the perks that we have, that they have in order to minister to the kids. Like I think DeSantis, he went around pushing back. He went around the state 2 weeks before the vote, pushing back against Amendment 3 and Amendment 4. And I think his influence is what swayed, the state. And
It seems like it, yeah.
yeah, he and his wife, what's her name? Is it Cassie DeSantis or Casey DeSantis, something like that?
Casey sounds right.
You'd have
Yeah.
a better guess than I would.
Yeah, but the two of them they seem like a wholesome family,
Yes.
and they're promoting righteousness on a lot of levels.
Yes.
And I
they
think
have
it's
their
great.
sphere together so that they can go help other people, Ron DeSantis
Exactly,
got
yeah.
his house in order, and he is helping our state, no doubt about
Yeah.
it. But there is a thing with Michelle Salzman, right? That she's, kind of hating on Ron DeSantis. So I'm not totally informed about that situation.
Jonathan, would you tell us about that?
Yeah, so in response to President Trump's immigration policy, Governor DeSantis wants to mobilize the governor's office and Florida to purge Florida of illegal immigrants, to deport them and such. And so he had called a special session and told them, you come to the session, and he kind of strong armed them into doing it. Threatened them if they didn't show up, and so they didn't like it. And so the bill that they proposed was not the governor's bill, and it was weak in a lot of areas. Basically, it meant Florida would do nothing officially, but just send money to places that they claimed would do something. And so no real penalties. You don't need money to detain illegal immigrants in Florida counties. You don't need that because they're not criminals like any other kind of criminal. They just need to be taken out of the state. So that's where the money needs to go. So it's grandstanding, fighting with the governor. And so our local representative is Michelle Salzman, and she's part of this coalition that is responding with a weak hand to abortion and not really serious about the issue. It seems like Governor DeSantis is serious, but
The issue of immigration.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, but for a lot of reasons, our local representative and a lot of other representatives are not being serious. They're not taking the issue seriously and not treating it like it is, regardless of what they say.
Yeah, with his reputation as governor these last several years, going against him, because he's made so many decisions and led us in so many ways that did promote righteousness, I think it should be politically ignorant of Michelle Salzman to be standing against Ron DeSantis on that issue.
Yep. Ron DeSantis has been a great governor, and I think he's just trying to make Florida safe, and I hope he advances in his endeavors.
Yeah, me too. Gentlemen, talk to us about NorthStone Baptist Church. The church is the people, and what a privilege we have to co-labor together and to minister to our church family and minister in our community. I said at Scott Butler's ordination in the public prayer just how thrilled I am that Britton and I's sons, Andrew being our middle son, got to grow up at NorthStone Baptist Church. We've been here almost 9 years. And so, you were 11, I guess, when you got here. So very formative influences. And we are a very healthy church. And I'm just thrilled by the godly influences over me and over my family because of just sweet-spirited, humble people at NorthStone Baptist Church. Talk to us about what the church, Pastor Jonathan, would you start? Talk to us about what the church family has meant to you and maybe the health and vitality of our church.
I came to the church to intern in senior year of undergrad, and it was essentially the second church that I'd been to. I was at one church until I was 8, and then I basically grew up in a second church, and so this was only the third one. And it's not exaggeration to say that NorthStone is my family, replacement family. You know, like just functionally the people that I know the best down here, and it's my community, and it's also my church. They're people that I genuinely have respect for and genuinely like, in addition to being part of the same body of Christ that I'm a part of. And so, you know, not having family and not having much of a community established here already, those things have come from the church, and those things have been shaped by the way that you've preached and like the way that you've led the church, your vision for it, but also because of the people who are willing to co-labor in that way.
Yeah. I totally second those thoughts, and want to add some of my own too. But I prayed on Sunday night. I just closed the service in prayer, but I referenced the church specifically and as an institution. And like the church as an institution is to aid the believer in its sanctification. And NorthStone Baptist Church has accomplished that in my life, for sure. Our church has aided me so much in my walk with Christ and my furtherance, in the faith, because of people like Scott Butler is what the context of what brought that up.
Right. We just ordained him as a deacon.
And he's one example of, probably no joke, 100 people that I could sit here and name accurately and honestly that have, aided me, or people that I've gone to with questions, or just people I get to that I don't interact with much, but I get to watch them interact with their wife on a Sunday morning and see how they treat their wife. And I get to see how just people interact with other people and the attitude they have, and some people's joy for the Lord. And I get to see like families get up there and sing on a Sunday morning or Sunday night.
The Wilsons especially. Yeah.
And it's just so encouraging to see families that are well ordered and are on the right focus, the right path. And so many of those things have benefited me. So, I mean, I'm grateful for them. Our church is healthy.
Yeah, amen. And I think the power of community is something that the world knows nothing of.
Yes.
I mean, when it comes to the called out assembly of believers and the strength that we draw from it, we talked about Ed Hicks, losing his wife and his daughter, but he has a faith family that's rallying around him and showing him a lot of love through what is otherwise and is a very deep trial.
Yeah. I don't know if you've said this, you probably have, but I don't know if it's original to you, but somebody said that if you don't have a church, then who's going to bury you, and just that sense of community that's so tight within the church, and not even things that are spiritual, just things that are physical. Like after we get done with this, I'm about to go play disc golf with Dustin Odom and other guys from the church, which is just like a benefit that's to the church, that not only can you participate in spiritual things together Thursday nights with Scott Butler and the Wilsons and that crew, but you could just do physical things like go play disc golf in La Hacienda afterward with Dustin Odom.
The spiritual is the first and the social is the second. It's a nice benefit.
Yeah. And the church provides all those things, specifically NorthStone.
Yes. And for those of you that don't know, let me tell you that Dustin Odom is phenomenal at disc golf. Do you think you can get him today or what? No.
I'm gonna need a big day today.
Okay.
I'm gonna need a big day today. But who knows? Anything's possible.
But
Words of Kevin Garnett, anything is possible.
Yeah, anything is possible. Yeah. 21 for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He played for the Celtics when he was screaming anything is possible.
Yeah, after they won the championship, I think.
Yeah.
He ripped his jersey open. He said, anything is possible.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I was going to brag on Dustin Odom for just a minute.
We'll play the clip. It'll make sense. I promise.
It's possible. Anything's possible!
Yeah. But he is sponsored by Strength for Life. Dustin Odom is, as a disc golf player, because he uses disc golf as a ministry to communicate the gospel.
Yes.
And a lot of the signage and stuff, he reps for Strength for Life.
Yes.
But then he's got like gospel signage and stuff.
He does. And he's also sponsored by Goliath Disc Golf, I think is what their name is. And if you use code ODOM, you'll get 10% off in all your Goliath purchases.
Goliath Discs is a Christian disc golf company.
Yep. And Dustin's a part of them.
Yep. So we support them.
Yeah, there we go.
Dustin.
Absolutely. Good. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on the Strength for Life podcast today.
It was a real honor to mix it up with you guys.
Yeah, fun. Always is fun.
A lot of fun.
We should do it again sometime.
Yes. And thank you all for joining us on the Strength for Life podcast. Hey, if there are ways that I can serve you as a pastor, please let me know. You can email me directly. My email address is pastor@northstonebaptist.org. Okay. We recognize that God is our refuge and strength and that he is a very present help in trouble. So to God be the glory. Thanks again for joining us.